Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to move beyond, the battlefield reports of the Ramayana and really plunge deep into the source code of power itself.
Hmm.
We're focusing on two legendary warriors, Indrajith, who was Ravana's son, and Bajrangabali Hanuman. I mean, these are titans, but here's the fascinating detail the sources really highlight.
Go on.
They both wielded the exact same legendary force.
That's right. The Vajra Shakti, which is the indestructible diamond thunderbolt power. And when you look at this through the lens of metaphysical law, it really poses a profound question for you, the listener.
Which is?
How can two beings with such wildly different spiritual foundations access the same ultimate power? The answer, as the sources show us, is that the paths they took were not just different, they were diametrically opposed.
Right. One of these warriors derived his strength from the inflation of the self, a titanic exertion of will to, control the cosmos.
And the other derived that exact same power from the complete dissolution of the self, from becoming totally transparent.
So for this deep dive, we're looking at sources that treat this confrontation not just as a clash of armies, but as this dynamic lesson in metaphysical geography and spiritual physics.
It links personal practice directly to the massive hydrological cycle that governs the entire Bay of Bengal region. It's fascinating.
And our mission today is to dissect these two approaches to ultimate power resistance versus surrender and discover the underlying cosmic law that dictates why, in this framework, maximum force is always channeled through minimum resistance. It's kind of a shortcut to understanding where true strength comes from.
I think that's a perfect way to frame it.
So let's start with a warrior who represents the pinnacle of assertion, Indrajith Meghanada, the supreme champion of Lanka.
His name literally translates to conquest of Indra through roaring thunder.
So the name itself is a declaration of defiance,
Yeah.
of individual sovereignty.
It absolutely is. His Vajra Shakti was earned through what are often called azuric austerities, these intense, focused acts of will and control, all aimed at gaining mastery over divine forces. He wasn't seeking grace. He was seeking leverage.
Right. It's about control.
It's all about control. His power was the result of an ego expanded to cosmic, almost uncontainable proportions.
Okay.
He bent the cosmic forces to his personal claim, asserting his will over the natural and divine order.
So he was trying to force the world to acknowledge his magnificent identity. We're talking about monumental tapasya or dedicated spiritual heat, but it's all directed externally, right?
Exactly. When he unleashed his famous thunder, it wasn't a sound of alignment with the cosmos. It was a sound of roaring against the divine structure.
A sound of resistance.
Maximum resistance. The force he channeled was inherently unstable because it relied entirely on him constantly maintaining and fortifying that massive sense of self. It was a fortress of energy.
Okay, now let's pivot and look at Bajrangabali Hanuman. He also has the Vajra Shakti. His body is so impervious it's called diamond-like, but he's universally known as the greatest bhakti yogi. A yogi of pure devotion.
And his force flows from total, completely frictionless surrender to his guru, Lord Rama.
Who the sources define as the embodiment of Shiva Tattva, right? The principle of pure consciousness.
That's it. And this whole path of surrender is woven into the very story of his life, starting with his name, Hanuman.
Which means the one with the broken jaw.
Exactly. And this wasn't just some random event. The sources presented as his crucial initiation. It was a shattering of pride right at birth.
I remember the story. He was an infant, and he leaps for the sun because he thinks it's a ripe fruit. I mean, that's just innocent audacity on a cosmic scale.
It is. And that's when Indra strikes him down with his thunderbolt, his Vajra, and shatters the infant's jaw.
Wait, so the very power that defines his destiny? The Vajra Shakti.
It first came to him as a strike that broke his original unbridled pride. His power, his very diamond body, was forged in the aftermath of that humbling.
So the breaking of his physical form, the tangible sign of his humbled state, was the necessary step for him to access the power. That is a huge paradox.
It's the central paradox of the whole narrative. Indrajith gains power by fortifying his ego against the thunderbolt. Hanuman gains power because the thunderbolt shattered his pride, dissolving the barrier of the self.
One built a fortress, the other became an open channel.
Perfect. His power flows from humility and ego dissolution, achieving maximum strength not through self-assertion, but through self-abandonment.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Because to truly understand why one path fails and the other succeeds, we have to grasp the larger cosmic mechanism they were both trying to tap into.
Right.
The sources immediately shift from the warriors to what you call the geography of grace. We have to talk about Amrita.
Amrita is so much more than just a mythological nectar. In the Shaiva cosmology we're drawing from, Amrita is defined as the downward flow of immortal consciousness itself.
So pure unmanifest grace.
Think of it like that, originating from Bindu, the absolute point of pure potentiality that resides at Sahasrara, the crown of existence. It's the infinite energy of awareness flowing downwards.
An infinite flow of consciousness pouring down. Why would that need a geographical regulatory system?
Well, because the sheer intensity of that pure, unregulated consciousness, if it just descended fully, would utterly consume all of manifestation. It would dissolve the created world instantly. So Lord Shiva takes on this essential role of the regulator, the cosmic filter.
And how does he do that? How does Shiva perform this filtering?
He receives the torrential celestial flow of Ganga, which is the physical manifestation of Amrita, directly into his matted locks, his Jaida.
Ah, okay.
And this massive cosmic filtering action breaks that overwhelming destructive intensity into distributable, manageable streams. He transforms pure, potentially obliterating consciousness into a form, the river Ganga, that can actually nourish and liberate the world without destroying it.
That distinction is key. So Shiva acts as the necessary resistance, but only to regulate the flow, not to stop it.
Precisely. And this explains why, among all the world's rivers, Ganga holds such a unique place. Other rivers are sacred, yes, but only Ganga is mythologically described as descending from the heavens, Ganga Vatarna.
Flowing through Shiva's purifying filter.
Which means she is carrying regulated consciousness wire that's fundamentally different from just, physical H2O.
And this geographical flow, it has a direct parallel in our internal anatomy, doesn't it?
It does. In yogic anatomy, Ganga corresponds to the Sushumna Nadi, the central channel of liberation that runs through the subtle body.
So just as the river carries Amrita across the landscape.
The Sushumna is the internal path that carries that same cooling, purifying liberation force within the seeker. It cleanses everything, karmic, ancestral, physical, as long as the channel is clear.
But the sources show us this whole process of grace is a cycle, not just a one-way flow. The river can't just stop when it hits the plains.
It can't. Ganga's journey is spiritually incomplete until she dissolves, returning that regulated consciousness back to the vast ocean. And this is where the Bay of Bengal comes into the picture.
The receptive womb.
Exactly. The great feminine counterpart to the masculine, regulating Himalayan axis. Amrita, this potent, regulated consciousness, must never be hoarded or trapped. It has to dissolve back into the cosmic source.
And the Bay of Bengal receives not just the Ganga, but the Brahmaputra too.
Making it the ocean most saturated with Himalayan spiritual memory. It functions as the great reservoir that receives, holds, and crucially redistributes Shiva's regulated Amrita. It completes the circulation of grace.
And the really remarkable part is how this cycle makes sure that grace isn't just confined to the riverbank.
That's right. The continuous massive evaporation over the Bay of Bengal causes the water that carried Ganga's essence to rise again into the clouds.
It transforms from a focused river channel into something atmospheric.
And then it falls again. Not as a geographically fixed river, but as grace without boundary as rain, blessing the entire region.
Including Sri Lanka, which is right there at the direct receiving end of these monsoon currents.
And this is the final stage. From the perspective of this metaphysics, this rain isn't new water. It's returned, purified, and redistributed Amrita. It has completed the full cycle, from a focused flow to a widespread atmospheric blessing available to all.
Which brings us back to our two warriors, because this entire cosmic cycle reveals the central spiritual teaching that determined the outcome of their conflict.
And the teaching is this. Shiva doesn't bless through the water itself. He blesses through stillness.
The water is just the carrier.
Just the carrier. And the purity of it is a reflection of the stillness contained within that flow. This is where the two paths diverge completely.
Indrajith's power operates through maximum resistance.
Yes. His immense ego acts like a fortress, and it's designed specifically to block grace, because grace implies surrender to a power greater than yourself.
His whole identity, his conquest over Indra, is an act of separation from that divine flow. But why does that matter if he's still so powerful? I mean, wouldn't an ego this magnificent, this fortified, be a better shield than an empty vessel?
It's a great shield against attack, but it's disastrous for receiving sustenance. Indrajith's system is all about heat, effort, and assertion. He's operating outside of Shiva's nirvana tattva, that absolute state of stillness which is the source of the cooling grace carried by Ganga.
His thunder roars against the source.
He cannot bring cooling, liberating grace because his entire being operates through the internal heat of an inflated self.
So his very identity, the thing he built to repel, fundamentally repels the very flow he should be channeling.
Exactly. His power, though immense, is fundamentally finite and self-limiting. Now look at Hanuman.
Zero resistance.
Zero resistance. His humility, that shattering of pride, makes him an empty vessel, utterly transparent to the divine flow. When those ego boundaries soften and the inner self achieves stillness, the Amrita flow is completely unobstructed.
And the fact that his body is described as Vajra diamond-like, indestructible, it proves the point.
Mm-hmm.
Power reaches its maximum intensity precisely when the personal claiming self is abandoned.
The power flows through him, not from him. And the sources make this so clear with a simple analogy. One person can feel totally liberated bathing in the physical Ganga, and another person can step out of the exact same water feeling nothing at all.
The water hasn't changed.
Not one bit. The difference is the interior condition. It's the presence or absence of resistance in the receiver.
I find that so applicable to life. Whether the flow is divine grace or creative inspiration or just, actionable knowledge, the difference between absorbing it and remaining untouched is all about our internal state of receptivity.
If you're inwardly still and transparent, the Amrita is experienced as Shiva's anugraha, his grace, flowing directly into manifestation. But if you're fortified by ego, striving down Indrajith's path, even the holiest waters can't penetrate that magnificent internal fortress.
So let's tie this back to the grand stage. Sri Lanka sits right there at the receiving end of these monsoon currents, blessed by rains born of the Bay of Bengal, carrying this redistributed Amrita. The spiritual question of the conflict then becomes, which warrior can actually channel that blessing effectively?
And for anyone to become the god of the sky, to channel the blessing of those life-giving clouds over the land, they have to operate through the principle that governs the entire cosmic water cycle.
Surrender, service, and transparency.
That's it. Indrajith, the conqueror, who asserted his will over Indra, he could terrify the sky, but he couldn't align with the principles governing the rain.
His thunder could terrify armies, but it couldn't bless the land.
It can't. It operates through the heat of an inflated self, which is the direct opposite of the cooling, liberating grace of Amrita. His immense power is fundamentally limited because it refuses to surrender to its true regulatory source.
So he's powerful, but he's fundamentally incapable of becoming a true vessel of cosmic grace.
Exactly. Hanuman, on the other hand, having dissolved the separate self, becomes the natural, unobstructed vessel. He didn't dominate the sky through conquest. He simply served the flow through alignment.
He became transparent.
Unburdened by ego, he allowed that pure consciousness, the consciousness from which the sky itself emerges, to flow through him without any friction.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner and the seeker, navigating the complexities of modern life? This narrative, filtered through this cosmological lens, it offers a pretty profound teaching for every challenge we face. We're constantly faced with a choice. Do we build our identity through maximum resistance and conquest, like Indrajith? Or do we recognize our true nature through minimum resistance and humility, like Hanuman?
And the sources are unambiguous. The victory of stillness is not passive resignation. It is the path that yields the greatest, most sustainable power. When you consider the principle that grace, that knowledge, that creative flow, chooses the vessel that has emptied itself, not the fortress that has fortified itself, maybe you can ponder this.
Go on.
How much of your current effort, your striving, your defense, your own magnificent identity is spent building a fortress that might secretly be blocking the very flow of knowledge or blessing or deep insight you fundamentally seek? Maximum power, the diamond body, it flows only through minimum resistance.